So, members, we will now adjourn. Well, one moment. Great to see you. No, we're adjourning in a second. Don't worry. No, we might. You can leave. It's all formal. So we will now adjourn the extraordinary session. Return to regular session because we still have those bills. Yes, apologies, members. And we will move very quickly. Ms. Harkey, why don't you go right up there and present yours? These are informational, so we'll move expeditiously.
I think I
go ahead, Ms. Harkey.
Testifiers. Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'm presenting on AB 1861. AB 1861 seeks to strengthen elections integrity by reinstating and funding the mandate that signatures be verified on provisional ballots that are cast in elections. As part of the Budget Act of 2013, a long list of state mandates were suspended. Including the list was the requirement that signatures be verified on provisional ballots cast in the state. The Secretary of State's office has identified signature verification as a critical method to prevent voter fraud. According to the Election Assistance Commission, Californians cast over 1 million provisional ballots on November 6, 2012. This was about 7% of the state's total votes and almost 40% of the nation's total provisional votes in that election. Verifying the signatures on provisional ballots deter and prevent fraudulent voting, which is particularly important in close races where outcomes can be determined by a small amount of votes. Voters from all political persuasions have the expectation that our elections are free and fair. These fundamental principles are encouraged. They encourage voter participation and legitimize our elected officials. It is incumbent that we who have been entrusted by the voters protect the integrity of elections in California, and the funding in this bill will go towards reimbursing counties for the cost of implementing provisional ballot signature verification procedures. Many counties in the state have been severely impacted by the recession and without funding may choose not to comply with previous mandated verifications. I would also like to note that this policy was originally placed into law unanimously by the legislature. Additionally, the Senate Budget Subcommittee number 4 has voted to reactivate all 9 election-related mandates. We have the chance to address this critical issue before the next election, and I look forward to working with members of the Budget Committee to restore this important mandate. I have one person here that would like to testify. No, you're not testifying. I don't have anybody that would like to testify. Oh, here we come. I thought so. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. Jeff Neal with the California State Association of Counties. As Assemblymember Harkey noted, this mandate requires that election officials check the signature on a provisional ballot before they count that ballot. Provisional ballots are handed out when somebody's identity cannot be immediately verified. So right now, under the law, it is not required that election officials check the identity of people before they count their ballots. We don't think that this is a sensible way for the law to stand, for this requirement to be optional. And in suspending the mandate is what made the requirement optional. Suspending the mandate was a budget savings for the state. Counties fulfilled this requirement for several years before the mandate was suspended, with the explicit understanding that they would be paid for it at the end of that time. And the suspension is part of a historic defunding of elections that the state has engaged in over the past several years, that amounts to essentially about $40 million a year to counties that the state has divested from the conduct of elections. So we support this bill as well as the other actions in the upcoming budget to unsuspend and fund the election-related mandates.
So we could have the next witness in support. Are you here to? No, you're not here to speak.
Department of Finance.
Okay. We don't have, unless you were testifying in support, we don't need to hear unless a member asks. But did you want to testify in support?
Actually, I'm neutral, but I would like to make a statement
Okay,
about that.
go ahead.
Madam Chair and members, I'm Trudy Schaefer, representing the League of Women Voters of California. And actually, Mr. Neal expressed very well what I would like to say on behalf of my organization. While we appreciate the effort to reimburse the counties for the current year for this particular mandate, we also would like to just say to you as members of the Fuller Budget Committee that we believe that all of those mandates should be funded both in the current year and in the budget year's proposals. So I do thank Ms. Harkey, but I also would like to urge you to do even more than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any witnesses in opposition?
I'm in support.
Okay.
My name is Deborah Jackson, and I represent Election Integrity Project, which is an independent, nonpartisan citizens group whose mission is to advocate for the fair and honest elections in California. And Election Integrity Project has, in the 2012 general elections, they trained over 2,000 poll observers that were dispatched to 21 counties, covering 650 precincts. They compiled a total of 1,750 incident reports documenting violations of election code. In contrast to that, the Secretary of State sent 8 poll observers out throughout the state of California. With that being said, and California, as Ms. Harkey indicated, California cast the most provisional ballots in the last general election, coming to about 40% of the total provision ballots cast throughout the nation, making the state of California the #1 provisional ballot casting state. It is vitally important that we do not allow that the signature verification step is bypassed in trying to make sure that those ballots cast are cast legally and counted accurately. So with that being said, the Election Integrity Project strongly supports this bill, and we encourage you to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any witnesses in opposition? All right. You may close, Ms. Harkey, and as you know, it's the suspense candidate.
Thank you. I appreciate you hearing this item. We are expecting to cast more and more provisional ballots as time goes on. The provisional ballots are a bit confusing for the people at the polls as it is, because they don't have to be really even in the same precinct that you're registered in. I mean, nothing really matters. And so we have found in many instances we have duplicative votes and other things. And I think that for the integrity of the elections in California, people need to feel like their vote really matters. Mm-hmm. And if they show up, they need to be counted. And if they're showing up in multiple locations and multiple times, that needs to be addressed. And this is one avenue, not the only, but it's one avenue. We all want to be sure we have fair and honest elections. It's part of our democracy. It is our democracy, is the right to vote, and your vote be counted, and your vote also be not questioned. And so I think this is really important where provisional ballots are concerned. The cost of this is $7 million, which I hate to say it, but we do a lot. We can probably find that somewhere in the budget. It's normally considered really budget dust, unfortunately, in this state, but it is a very important part of budget dust that needs to go to approving our elections and ensuring that people have confidence that when their vote's cast, it's real, they're not being infringed upon, nobody's coming in and doing anything in a fraudulent nature. We just want to be sure that everybody's vote is counted and that, in fact, they're counted only once. It's very important. So thank you very, very much for your time. I would love to see this move forward, and I look forward to working with the committee to ensure that it does so, especially in light of the number of provisional ballots that we're getting now and the ones we're expecting to get, to ensure that voters actually can vote wherever they happen to show up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Ms. Gaines for AB 2267. Anyway, let's go. Yeah, we have to have another one. Go ahead, Ms. Gaines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I bring before you AB 2267, which would require, beginning with the 2015-16 budget year, the State Department of Parks and Recreation to annually develop and publish state operation expenditures for the state park system to assist in the development of the governor's annual budget proposal. In 2012, 70 state parks were scheduled to close as a result of what was then thought to be a budget shortfall. However, a Sacramento Bee article revealed that management staff at the department had taken advantage of a costly vacation buyout, as well as revealed an estimated $54 million unaccounted for within their operating budget. Subsequently, I requested an audit of the department in order to find out where that money was going, as well as revealing what kind of oversight and accountability procedures were in place. The results of the audit indicated that the budgeting process from the department needed reform. Specifically, the audit suggested that the individual park districts prepare and submit spending plans to the departments, improve methodology for developing individual park unit budgets, do a much better job outlining future costs, and defining service levels so that the department can measure whether those levels are being met. While the department did develop a process to calculate each park's past expenditures and future cost, a subsequent audit conducted in September of 2013 found that the department had not fully implemented that process to track expenditures, and therefore the department cannot comply with state law to provide accurate information for the legislature to consider. AB 2267 would require the department to develop and implement a more efficient plan to annually track expenditures made at the park units the previous fiscal year, as well as the current fiscal year. AB 2267 is needed so that the public trust in the Department of Parks and Recreation can begin to be restored. I know each of you on this committee have parks in your district that are very special to your constituents. Wouldn't you want your parks to have this information available to them in order to prevent more closures and make sure money is not being wasted again? Thank you. I respectfully request your aye vote on this bill. And with me here today to testify is Chris Holtz.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Chris Holtz, and I am the Senior Fiscal Analyst assigned to State Parks Budget and Appropriations issues at the Assembly Republican Fiscal Office. We support AB 2267 because it simply requires the Department to provide annual budgets for its park units every January 10 in conjunction with the Governor's budget. This bill is patterned after the process that Parks has already developed, vetted, and approved. Parks Management began this process in response to a bipartisan supplemental report language approved in 2013. In addition, this bill asks Parks to produce nothing more than what is required by all other state departments. This bill is not just the result of Assemblymember Gaines' audit request, but the culmination of audits and administrative reviews conducted by the Attorney General, the State Controller, and the Department of Finance's Office of State Audits and Evaluations. The state auditor found that key internal controls are still deficient and put at risk newly appropriated funds. Of the 25 recommendations made by the auditor, Parks and the Department of Finance have fully implemented only 5. According to the state auditor report, and I quote, "Until the department defines the service levels for its park units, it may be difficult for the department to convince the legislature and other decision makers of the necessity or appropriateness of proposed increases to its budget to operate the park system." One key state auditor recommendation is as follows: to ensure that it can comply with state law in the event that it must close parks or reduce park services in the future, the department should improve its methodology for developing individual park unit budgets and determining and tracking park level costs. As of today, the state audit staff believes that park reforms taken to date are not sufficient to prevent illegal allocation of funds uncovered over the past few years and provide an honest, accurate accounting of what it actually costs to operate and maintain state park units. The department has not convinced the auditor through sufficient documentation that it can establish budgets for its park units and track or maintain its budget to operate the park system. Further investigations by the state auditor are still hampered by the acknowledged fact that Parks payroll system, leave accounting system, and position roster file are not sufficiently reliable for the purposes of an audit. We believe that this bill will, in fact, save state taxpayers and park users major future costs through transparent, factual budgeting and allocations. It can be implemented within existing department resources with no additional state appropriations. This is supported by the fact that the state auditor has determined that the amount budgeted for the department's 436 vacant positions as of last year was roughly $21 million. These funds have been diverted annually toward unapproved, unspecified operating expenses beyond the oversight scrutiny of the legislature. Though these vacancies will be abolished through appropriate mechanisms by the state controller, Parks continues to maintain these additional appropriations, though the areas to which funds are diverted and the nature of the original needs for the appropriation have either been eliminated or ignored. In summary, AB 2677 is key in implementing the systemic changes needed to prevent the deficiencies revealed by these multiple audits, and that these needed reforms can be accomplished within the department's existing fiscal resources. Thank you, and I'd be happy to be available for any questions the subcommittee may have.
Thank you for the testimony. Is there any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Ms. Gaines, you may close.
Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you so much. We will now go to Mr. Linder's bills. AB 2652, AB 2653. These are suspense candidates, so they're informational here. It's right now, just like approps, we're hearing it, and then it goes to suspense, and we determine whether we have the budget to move them forward. As they've each indicated, well, in the last one, they indicated there wasn't a cost. They're actually staff analysis. This is a fiscal bill. So anyway, we have to do the further analysis to determine the costs on each of the bills. Go ahead, Mr. Linder.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm proud to present the first of two bills that I have up today that are part of the Republican Transportation Funding Proposal. AB 2652 would dedicate 1/2 of any surprise revenues this year, beyond the revenues forecast by the governor last January, to fund shovel-ready projects across the state. The other half of extra revenues would be deposited in the budget stabilization account to prepare for future recessions. I'm sure you're all concerned about education funding, as I was when this bill was first discussed, but not to worry. Schools will be allocated the full amount due to them under Proposition 98 before excess revenue is distributed. Members, since 2001, the legislature has authored a series of general fund loans within the budget bills from various key transportation funds, including the Transportation Congestion Relief Fund, the State Highway Account, and the Public Transportation Account, totaling $3.4 billion. So far, $2.534 billion of these loans have yet to be repaid, creating cash flow issues and project delays. The legislature attempted to start addressing the repayment in 2011 with AB 115, when the payments were postponed and stated that they would be repaid in small increments through June 30th, 2021. The governor then improved on this in January in his budget proposal when he proposed to repay $351 million. While this is a nice starting point, California's infrastructure has been neglected for too long and relied too heavily on borrowing. Now that Prop 1B funds are running out, we again find ourselves in a place where we must make a tough decision. Do we continue to rack up additional debt or show that our infrastructure is a priority for budgeting? With California's finances improving, we should be making wise investment choices for any surplus revenue. 1, saving for any future recession and the expiration of Prop 30 taxes, and 2, making a one-time badly needed investment into our transportation infrastructure spending. I have been a lifelong driver of the 91 freeway, one of the most heavily traveled freeways in Riverside and Orange County, and I have personally seen the gradual deterioration that has occurred due to lack of investment. The California Transportation Commission has seen this as well and found that California is short $300 billion with a B, just to maintain our current system. A deteriorating system leads to increased pollution from cars idling, decreased productivity at work, and most importantly, less time spent with one's family. AB 2652 is not the end-all answer, but it can be a significant one. I understand this bill will be going into suspense, but I hope the Budget Committee will continue to work with me and my caucus on addressing our infrastructure needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there witnesses in support? Certainly part of the reason that we have less money for that such transportation infrastructure is because we have made it dependent on the gas taxes, and people are wisely using less gas. So we may want to consider that. If we don't have any other witnesses in either support or opposition, we'll allow you to present on AB 2653.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members. AB 2653 is my second bill before you today that is a part of the Republican transportation funding proposal. AB 2653 would eliminate the use of gas tax revenue for general obligation bond debt service and backfill of $1 billion in gas excise taxes into the state highway account and use this revenue for city, county, local streets and roads apportionments pursuant to existing formulas in state law. Since the passage of Proposition 42, dedicated gasoline sales tax revenue has been partially transferred or loaned to the general fund in order to pay past debt on transportation projects and balance general fund shortfalls. In 2006, Proposition 1A limited the conditions under which the Proposition 42 transfers of gasoline sales tax revenues for transportation uses can be suspended. To circumvent these legal restrictions, the legislature enacted a gas tax swap, essentially repealing Proposition 42 to exempt gasoline from the 6% sales tax, costing the state approximately $2.5 billion annually. Now, to offset this loss, the legislature increased the excise taxes on gasoline by 17.3 cents in 2010-2011. AB 2653 will restore the original intent of Proposition 42 and 1A, returning a greater share of transportation tax revenues to local agencies and relieve fiscal constraints placed on them by the gas tax swap. It's time to start undoing some of the gimmicks the legislature was forced to undertake during one of California's most dire fiscal times. I know I just said it on the previous bill, but with California's fiscal outlook finally starting to improve, we should be returning the infrastructure funding to being a priority. California's local transportation districts have so far been able to make do with the reduced resources we have provided, but with Proposition 1B funds about to run out, this task will become much more difficult, if not impossible. The legislature should be ensuring that we provide the tools needed by our local transportation districts to ensure our roads remain safe and maintained. At one point, California's infrastructure was second to none. And while we have a long road back to cover our $300 billion shortfall in our transportation infrastructure funding, there are some first steps we can take. I am hopeful that infrastructure funding will once again become a priority and believe the Assembly can send a strong message to the Governor with the passage of the Republican funding proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Madam Chair and members, Department of Finance is opposed to this bill because it would severely undermine the state's ability to maintain the state highway system by taking the state's $1.3 billion annual share of funding and giving it to the cities and counties, resulting in an increasingly severe degradation of the current highway system. Furthermore, this bill would result in increased general fund costs of $60 million for annual debt service on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Thank you for that, for the analysis. I know that I mentioned before the issue about gas tax has been brought up before. That we have less, regardless of different approaches you've proposed or whatever, that we are falling short now in our funding for transportation. And I know that Mr. Bloom's subcommittee has had some discussion about that. I believe Mr. Daly's also. And I look forward to that discussion continuing because it is an area that we do need to address. So thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to partnering with you.
Great. And we will now ask Mr. Nasnande to present on his bill. ACA 13. Almost done. Almost done. Mr. Nastunde, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My bill, if I can give you a little bit of background, my bill basically would say the controller, state controller has to certify the budget is balanced before we can call it a balanced budget. But let me give you a little history of why this, why the thought occurred. And Chairwoman Skinner, I think, is the only one on the panel with me that came here in 2009 when it was just an upside down problem with the budget. And I know a lot of your discussions here today have dealt with that. And what I saw from that was wildly optimistic numbers coming out of the administration to balance the budget. And that year we had 3 budgets in that same year in 2009. A lot of problems, but a lot of it was overestimating the revenue. And it, going forward, had the same thing the next time. So the easiest way to balance the budget is say, well, there's another $20 billion coming in from revenue, whatever that might be. That's the easiest way to balance the budget. The problem is it doesn't come, and then you have a big, huge hole in the budget. And so the thought is to have the controller look at the revenue estimates and say, is this a true estimate? And also when the budget gets back, to have the controller look at it and say, okay, that makes sense, we're going to certify this. And other states have done so, so this isn't a unique idea. But having a controller, or let me finish the story. So after the 2 years of this, then the majority party made a decision, and it was a good move on their part, to bring a proposition forward, Prop 25, to say, let's do a majority vote only, because before, remember, we had a 2/3, and so there's a lot of wrangling to get the balanced budget, but now the majority had a ability to pass the budget on their own. But with that proposition, Prop 25, they said, give us the majority to vote to balance the budget, and we won't pay legislators if the budget isn't balanced on time, if the budget isn't passed on time. So what happened in 2011? A budget was passed, if you remember this, a budget was passed, and then the governor said, that's not balanced, and they sent it back, and they withheld the legislature's pay, as the initiative had said, you don't get paid if it's not balanced. So there was a problem. The governor says it's not balanced, the legislature says it is, and the controller then stepped into it and said, I'm not going to pay the legislature because I don't think it's balanced. Or I guess he took the governor's word for it and said, I agree, it's not balanced. So I thought, well, this is perfect timing. I'd already had this introduced. I said, that's the point of my bill. This closes the hole. Now you, Mr. Controller, will have the authority to say it is balanced or it is not. Since you're the one that is cutting off the checks and not paying the legislature, you might as well have that formal authority now and say you are the arbiter in this discussion. So I believe the circumstances came full circle to support my bill, and I'm hoping you will do the same today.
Do we have any witnesses in support?
No, but I wish we did.
Do we have any witnesses in opposition? Department of Finance, did you have a comment on this?
We have no position on this. We do note the cost for the controller to prepare an annual general fund revenue estimates and to certify the enrolled budget is certify that the enrolled budget bill is balanced is in the millions of dollars.
Yes, the controller, I find this all very ironic because the controller, of course, weighed in and said our budget wasn't balanced, and yes, and then later he's indicated that the Office of the Controllers indicated that they can't determine whether a budget's balanced or not unless they have about 50 or 60 more staff, and yet they were happy to do it in that particular year.
That's the point, Madam Chair.
So anyway,
but
should we spend, should we give them 50 to 60 more staff when we have roads, for example, that still need to be repaired so that they can determine something that we have we've given constitutional authority to others, and the court certainly agreed with us. So anyway,
Madam Chair, I think we may want to do this, but with far less staff.
I agree, and that's just their estimate. Look, they can take the LAO, Department of Finance, they can look at the estimates. I don't see why it takes 50 people to do this. It shouldn't be that difficult. And as you said, it's a perfect conundrum because the court says the controller with some authority had some information to say it's not balanced and I'm going to withhold your checks, and the court said, well, you can't do that. That's why it left it in limbo. This closes the loop here to make it legal, and as he's proven, he can already make that decision without the staff prior to.
All right, well, we look forward to the continued discussion, and thank you for presenting, and it will be in suspense.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Whoops, members, I believe that is our business for the day, so we are adjourned. I want to make sure that...